You stopped going. Not dramatically, not with an announcement. You just didn't show up one Sunday, and then another, and you told yourself you were taking a break. But underneath the break was something you hadn't admitted yet. You were waiting to see what would happen, whether anyone would notice, whether the absence of you would create any kind of gap in the space you had occupied. So you waited. You checked your phone more than you usually do. Not obsessively, just aware. The way you're aware of a conversation you're hoping someone will start. Monday passed. Tuesday. By Wednesday, you had stopped expecting something and started bracing for what the silence was saying. Thursday. Friday. Sunday came again, and you didn't go, and nobody called, and nobody texted, and nobody sent the message that said, "We missed you last week. Is everything okay?" And the silence that filled the space where that message should have been said something you've never been able to unhear. Not that they didn't love you, not that they were bad people, something more specific and more devastating than either of those things. That you could disappear from their lives, and the shape of those lives would remain exactly the same. That there was no U-shaped hole. That the absence of you created no absence at all. And that is not the same as not being loved. It's something quieter and worse. Here's the part that's hard to say out loud. You had thought you belonged there. Not in a naive way. Not because you'd never considered that community is complicated, but in the specific way you belong somewhere when you've given it years. You had served. You had shown up. You had been present in the ordinary ways that build a life inside a community. You knew people's names. You knew their stories. You thought they knew yours. And the silence after you left told you something about how well they knew your story. It told you that your story, in their experience, was background, not foreground. Not the kind of presence that, when it's gone, leaves a gap someone notices. Background. And you had given those years thinking you were building something mutual, something that ran in both directions. And the silence said, maybe not. And you have been trying to figure out what to do with that ever since. Because it didn't feel like rejection. Nobody said anything unkind. Nobody chose to exclude you. They just didn't notice. And not being rejected is a strange comfort when the alternative is not being seen. Because rejection at least implies that someone registered you were there. Invisibility is different. Invisibility means you were there and it didn't matter enough to register. And the thing you can't stop returning to is not the church or the people or even the silence. It's the thing the silence revealed about what you were to them and about what you thought you were to them. And the gap between those two things. Here's something worth naming. What you experienced is not the same as not being loved. Those are not the same thing. And the church has often failed to make that distinction. It talks about love as though love is sufficient. As though being loved, genuinely, by people who would be saddened if they knew you were hurting, is the same as being seen. But they're not the same. You can be loved in a general way by a community that doesn't know you specifically enough to notice when you're gone. You can be valued in the abstract while being invisible in the particular. And what you needed, what community is supposed to provide, is not the general love. It's the particular knowing. The version where someone knows you specifically enough that your absence creates a specific absence. Where the shape of you is known well enough that the missing of that shape is felt. And most communities are far better at general love than particular knowing. Not because they're bad communities, because particular knowing requires sustained attention. Attention to the specific person, not just the general congregation. And that level of attention is rare. And you had assumed it existed. And the silence taught you that it didn't. Not for you. Not yet. Maybe not in that place. But here's what the silence can't tell you. It can tell you about the community's capacity for particular knowing. It cannot tell you about your value. Those are not the same measurement. Because the community's failure to notice your absence is information about the community. About its size, its structure, the way attention flows inside it. The number of people who fall through the gap between general love and particular knowing. It is not information about whether you deserve to be noticed. And this distinction matters more than it might seem. Because the conclusion the silence produces, that you weren't worth noticing, is not supported by the evidence. The evidence only supports. This community did not have a structure, the capacity, or the specific relationship with you to notice. That's painful. That's worth grieving, but it's not a verdict on your worth. And if you've been treating it as a verdict, if the silence has been speaking to you about who you are rather than about what the community was capable of, that conclusion needs to be separated from its source. The community didn't notice. That says something about the community, and nothing about whether you were worth noticing. Think about a library, a large one, thousands of books, and one book gets shelved in the wrong section. Not because it's a bad book, because the library is large and the cataloging isn't perfect and nobody noticed the error. And the book sits in the wrong section. Unsought, not checked out, not read. Not because the book isn't worth reading, because it's in the wrong place for the people who would appreciate it to find it. And the book's value has nothing to do with whether it was found. The value was always in the book. The being found is about the library system, not the book, never the book. You ended up in a community that didn't have the structure to find you. Not because there was nothing in you to find, because the system wasn't built for it. And the solution isn't to conclude that you're not worth finding. The solution is to find the kind of community or to build the kind of relationships within a community that is specific enough, close enough, particular enough to notice the shape of you when you're gone. That community exists. Those relationships are possible, and deserving them has never been in question. The question was always about the system, not about you. Jesus told a story about a shepherd who had 100 sheep, and one went missing, and he left the 99 to go find the one. Not because the one was more valuable than the others, because the one was missing, and missing in the economy of that shepherd was sufficient reason to go. The sheep didn't have to be the most important sheep. It didn't have to have given the most to the flock. It didn't have to have been noticed before it went missing. Its absence alone was enough. The story Jesus told was not about a community that noticed when you were gone. It was about a God who did, and the distinction matters. Because the community failed you in a way that communities fail. They didn't notice, but the shepherd in the story noticed, and left everything to go looking. Not because you had earned the search, because the absence of you, even to a God who has more than 100, was something that required a response. You are not someone whose absence went unregistered, not by the one who counts. The community may have continued without a gap, but something noticed the gap and went looking for you, and is still looking, even now, even here. So here's what I want to say to the version of you that checked the phone and waited. What you experienced was real. The silence was real. The gap between what you thought you were to those people and what the silence revealed. That's real too, and it's worth grieving, not moving past, not explaining away, not covering with theology before you've actually let yourself feel it. Grieving, the specific kind that comes from expecting something real and discovering it was thinner than you thought. That kind of grief needs room, because what you lost wasn't just the community. It was the version of belonging you thought you had. And that loss is specific, and it deserves to be felt specifically. But here's what the silence cannot take from you. The value that was always yours. The particular, specific, irreplaceable shape of you that the community didn't know well enough to miss. Didn't stop being particular and specific and irreplaceable just because they didn't see it. You're not less because you were unseen. You're not worth less because the phone didn't ring. You're not background in your own story because you were background in theirs. And the God who left the 99, he has never once treated you as background. He has always known the specific shape of your presence. And he has always known when it's missing. You are not invisible to him. You have never been invisible to him. And the belonging you're looking for, the specific, particular, I know you're a shape kind. It starts there, with the one who noticed you were gone before you even left. Before you go, type these words in the comments. I was seen, even when they didn't notice. Not as a comfort that denies the wound, as a truth that exists alongside it. You were seen. You are seen. You have always been seen by the one who counts.